Welcome back. This is, okay, first, if you're on YouTube, I recommend you check out my website here, www.danceofthecosmos.com. Now, this is part two of the natural ages of the planets. So now we're going to get more into we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of how to judge these time periods, because in the first video we talked about what the time periods are, we talked about the length of the time period, we talked about which planet rules which in the natural ages, the natural dashas of the planets. We covered that. And but I talked about it in a very general way, like how you would look at it for a large swath of the population. But that's not what we're necessarily doing. We're typically looking at birth charts. We're looking at an individual's life. So how do we judge these periods of life? Which periods are going to be better? Which periods are going to be worse? So first let's just recap how it works. Okay, so what planets rule what periods of time? So from the minute that you're born, the time of birth, to the first year, the first birthday, that's ruled by Moon. From the first birthday to the third birthday is ruled by Mars. 3rd to 12th, Mercury. 12th to 32nd, Venus. 32nd to 50th, Jupiter. 50th to 70th, Sun. And then 70th and beyond is ruled by Saturn. So how do we know how these time periods are going to go? Well, you're just going to look at those planets and you're just going to see how they are in the chart in the way that you normally would assess it. So how do we use what third dimensional techniques? What's a third dimensional technique? That's how, when we're judging the depth of field, when we're seeing how it's doing. What do we use for this? Well, we can just use planetary dignity. We can look at Shadbala. We can look at the conjunction of any planets, whether that planet is a cruel planet like Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu. Could cause more problems if it's conjunct with one of those planets. And if one of those planets that it's conjunct, regardless if any of the planets is conjunct, are a Dushtana lord, a lord of the rule. So that planet, basically, that planet also rules the 6th house, the 8th house, or the 12th house. That can cause some problems in this dasha. You can look at the placement of that planet, which part of placement is planetary dignity. The other planet is what house it's placed in. So is it in an angle? Is it in a trine? Is it in a Dushtana house? So you get an idea of how those time periods are going to play out. So that's one way to look at it, and you can do that for all the different planets. You can look at it in all the different Vargas. That's one way to analyze the planet. So then also there's another way of, so there's subdivisions, just like with all, and Vimshotari Dasha, so there's the Mahadasha, and there's the Antardasha, the Pratyantardasha. So it's like there's 5 levels of Vimshotari Dasha. Well, there's basically 2 levels of the planetary dashas. And this is determined by whether the planet, the sign that the planet is in, if it is in an odd or if it is in an even sign. So how do we know whether it's an odd sign or an even sign? Another way to look at it is it's a masculine or a feminine sign. So all the counting of the Rashi starts with Aries. Aries is 1. So any Rashi then, so Taurus is 2. So any Rashi that is an odd number, so that would be Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius. Those are all masculine Rashis. Those are all Rashis that are odd numbered. Then all the even numbered Rashis, which is going to be Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces. All those are even numbered Rashis. All those are feminine Rashis. So if you have Venus in Aries. Let's just say Venus is in Aries. They're in Venus Dasha. So there's going to be 12 different periods of Venus Dasha. 12 different periods of Venus Dasha. Venus is in Aries. That means that, so those 12 different periods, guess what? They're going to be each Rashi. So you're going to judge the Rashi that Venus is in. And how is it doing in that Rashi? How is it, what's its dignity there? What house is that particular Rashi? You're going to look at the Rashi aspects that are coming to that. Not the planetary aspects that Venus is receiving, but the Rashi aspects. So you're going to look at all of those things, and we'll look at a couple example charts in the next video. We're just going to talk about this for now, and then we'll do a video of examples. So then, so if Venus is in Aries, then, so you're going to divide it into 12 time periods, right? 1 for each Rashi. So the first time period, we're going to count clockwise with all planets that are placed in odd numbered rashis or masculine rashis. We count clockwise for the next corresponding time period. So you're going to divide the time period by 12. Venus is a 20-year time period, which means that divide that by 12, you're going to get 1 year and 8 months. So every 1 year and 8 months, so the first sign, Venus is going to go from, in Aries, Venus is going to go from age 12 to age 13 and 8 months. And then at the age of 13 and 8 months, they're going to move to the next sub-period, which is going to be that of Taurus, because that's the next sign counting clockwise from Aries. So then you would go from 13 and 8 months to 15 and 6 months. That would be another year and 8 months, and you would switch to the next sub-period, which is going to be the third sub-period, which is going to be the sign of Gemini. So, and then from Gemini, you're going to count another year and 8 months, and you're going to see, okay, this is how Gemini is situated here, and then you're going to look, and it's going to be a year and 8 months after that. I think that would be a lot of math at this point. So that would be, you'd be 15 and 6 months, and then it would be 17 and 4 months. And during that period between the age of 15 and 6 months and 17 and 4 months, we would be looking at the sign of Gemini. So I might be wrong on the math there. I'm not sure. I'm not going to really worry about it. But that's the idea. Then you're going to count all the way around. So obviously the last part is going to be from age 30 and 8 months. So if you're 30 years old and 8 months, then you were born, let's say you were born in the year 2000, January 1st, year 2000. So then that would mean that in 2030, in August of 2030, you would move into the 12th Rashi of Venus Dasha, Venus Natural Dasha, which would be here in Pisces. And so you would analyze how Pisces is doing. You would look at the planets there. Is it cruel planets? And so each of these Rashis, each of these sub-periods you're going to look at, you're going to go, okay, are there cruel planets in there? Are there gentle planets? Is it aspected by cruel planets? Is it aspected by gentle planets? And then you're going to look at that, and that's going to give you an idea of how that time period is going to do. Now let's talk about if Venus was in Pisces. So let's put Venus in Pisces now. Pisces, like we mentioned earlier, it's the 12th. It's an even numbered Rashi. It's the 12th Rashi, and it's a feminine Rashi, which means if Venus is in Pisces, or if Venus is in Scorpio, Capricorn, Virgo, Cancer, or Taurus, which are all the feminine Rashis, all of the even numbered Rashis, then we would be counting counterclockwise for the Venus Dasha. So if age 12 to age 13 and 8 months is, we would look at Venus in Pisces. We know that Venus is exalted in Pisces, so we'd be like, yeah, this looks like it's going to be, overall, it looks like it's going to be a good Dasha. And then hopefully Venus is not conjunct a lot of bad planets, but being that it's exalted, it would probably get over that anyway. Anyhow, so we would be looking at that, and we would go, okay, so from age 12 to 13 and 8 months, you know, that's probably going to be a really good, smooth transition into the age of Venus. And then from so then the next Rashi we're going to look at, we're not going to look at Aries, because that's counting clockwise. We're going to go counterclockwise now. And now we're going to look at for the age of 13 and 8 months to the age of 15 and 6 months, we are going to look at the Rashi of Aquarius. We're going to look at Aquarius, and we're going to see how it's influenced good planet, you know, gentle planets, cruel planets aspecting. Does it look like it's going to be hard or an easy time, basically? And then then the next one we're going to look at is Capricorn, and the next Rashi we're going to look at is Sagittarius, etc., every year and 8 months. We're just going to change that all the way. And the last period is going to be there in Aries. That'll be the 12th one that we will count from Pisces. And that's the way that we can count the sub-periods. We'll look at this in the next video. We will actually go through some examples, and we'll dive right into it. So with that being said, that's basically how you do it. And then you want to do it in all the appropriate Vargas. And so for example, since Moon is only the year that we're born, since the time we're born till our first birthday is Moon. So obviously each divide 1 year by 12, you get 1 month. So every month that you're born, from the day that you're born, then that's going to be, for 1 month, you're going to look at each Rashi. It's going to move really fast. You're going to go across the zodiac really fast with the moon. And so with that being said, and the fact that, and to be practical, like what are you going to look at? Are you going to look in the moon Dasha for the first year of life? Are you going to look at their Navamsha chart? Or are you going to look at their Saptamsha chart for relationships and marriage? No, that's not even possible. It's not even fathomable. Let go of that. Just look at, what I would recommend for the moon Dasha would be to look at, for the moon and the Mars Dasha, talking about age 0 to 1, 1 to 3, especially 0 to 1, you're going to want to look at the Rashi chart. You're going to look at the Trim Samsha chart. If you're going to look at a Varga, you're going to look at the D30, which is has to do with health, has to do with the body. Anything you look at for the Rashi chart, you always look at for confluence in the Trim Samsha chart. So, if you see that the moon is afflicted because it's with Saturn in the Rashi chart, and you see the moon is afflicted with Rahu in the Trim Samsha chart, well then you can be sure, yeah, this might be a tough period. But there's always more to it. There's always more to it. Never forget with these natural ages of the dashas, or natural ages of the dashas, natural ages of the planets, natural dashas of the planets, is that this is just one layer. This is just one layer. Then you have to look at Vimshotari. There's a lot of other things. You have to read the chart as a whole when it comes to health. You can't just judge one planet and expect to see, oh, moon is with Saturn, moon is with Rahu, like I had mentioned before. Then yeah, that might bring some troubles, but what kind of troubles are those going to be? Well, chances are that's going to be more mental and emotional kind of struggles is kind of what that represents, depending on what the moon represents also, and depending on how well situated those planets are as well. I mean, there's a lot more to it. Depends on what houses those planets rule. And so that's an idea. And then another thing I'd like to say is, if you want to take it to the next level of interpretation, so if you're talking about the Venus Dasha, and you're looking at the Venus Dasha, what else you can do is see what Venus rules. So we've talked about where Venus is placed. Well, you can look at each Rashi. Well, first you can look and see what Venus rules and see what this particular Venus rules in this chart. We talked about, in the first video, Venus as a Karaka. Now you can be looking at what Venus rules individually, which might be give you an idea of what to expect. And this idea of what Venus rules, that's going to be the same thing that Venus is going to give in any of its dashas, in its Vimshotari dasha, in Kotara Soma dasha, in Yogini dasha, whichever the dasha that you choose to use with it, Venus is going to rule, have an agenda for the same things. So you can look at what Venus's agenda is, what it's got on, what it rules as a house lord, what planets it rules, and that's going to give you an idea of what to expect might be kind of more of a focus during this time of their life. And then when you're looking at those sub periods, like I mentioned, like, so you know that Venus is in Pisces, like we said, right? Okay, so if Venus was in Pisces, let's say that Pisces is the 4th house. So then you would know that, okay, then during this period of their life, maybe they're more interested in bicycles, 4th house things. Maybe they're more interested in their mother. And then when you go to the next sign, because we said that you would go to Aquarius next, and then let's say they're 13, let's say they're 14 years old, so they're in the second period of the next Rashi of Venus, natural age, and we know that that's going to be Aquarius. Well, Aquarius is 3rd house, so maybe this is when that person starts getting into sports. Maybe that's when the person really starts studying and really takes interest in their hobbies and skills, and 3rd house matters. And then when they go into the next period of their life, when they're about 15, 16 years old, now they're in the 2nd house. So maybe this is when they go get a job. Maybe this is when they start to think about their own finances and start taking on more responsibilities. That's kind of what the 2nd house represents. So you can get an idea of that through those sub-periods of what's going on. And then you can look at the planets that are in those sub-periods. And so in that 2nd house, maybe the sun is there, which would make sense because it's close to Venus. The sun's typically going to be not further than 2 or 3 Rashis away from Venus. So you would be like, okay, well, here we go. So here's the sun, here's the 2nd house. Well, geez, sun is about career, sun is about potential, what you want to do. 2nd house is about that. Sun rules, because this would be a Sagittarius ascendant, sun rules the 9th house. So yeah, well, maybe this was more so about them finding their purpose and their path by getting that job. But it also might be a little bit more difficult. Maybe it shows that their parents were kind of against them getting that job and stuff, because that's the 9th because Sun is a cruel planet, and that's the ninth lord. So this is just an idea of how you can go about on a hypothetical chart that I'm making up in my head, how you can do it. But we will look in the next video. We will look at actual charts, and we'll kind of make a quick assessment. We'll look at least one chart. I don't know. Maybe we'll do 2 charts. And we'll just go through the ages of the planets, and we'll just look at it. Don't spend too much time with the Moon and the Mars Dasha and even the Mercury. Just kind of glance. So I always just kind of glance quickly, look at those charts, because the majority of things that are going to happen in people's lives that they're going to care about, that you're going to be seeing for an astrologer, are going to be in those three periods of Venus, Jupiter, and Sun. You don't get as many people in a Saturn Dasha. Maybe you do. You don't get as many people in the Mercury Dasha. You're going to get their parents. And then also, if you get parents, you'll want to look at that Moon Dasha a little bit more, and like I said, in the Rashi and the Trim Samsha, because what else are they going to care about for their child? They're going to care about, for that first year of life, they're only going to care about its health. So that's going to be the most important things to look at. And then always think about that too. So again, we'll look at some example charts, so hopefully it'll make a lot more sense, because right now we're not looking at anything. I'm just talking off the top of my head. And hopefully this makes a lot of sense to you. You find this valuable. And hopefully you watch part 3. All right. Thank you. Namaste.